Hello, class. I hope you are all doing well. My voice is failing me yet again today, so I've got my tea. Hopefully, this will help. If my voice starts to crack or if I sound like a prepubescent or something like that, please forgive me. Um, Today, we're going to talk about Goblin Market. And Goblin Market is an allegorical poem that was written in the Victorian era. So these are things that we need to talk about. First of all, an allegory is a story with a double meaning. So think about classic definitions of the allegory. The best one I can think of is the ugly duckling, which is a lie that we tell children to help with growing pains. And it's a story about, there are these little ducklings, and one of them is kind of goofy looking, and the other ones are, I guess, pretty by duckling standards. And the ugly duckling has a bunch of sort of self doubt and feels very awkward and sort of out of the loop. And then he grows up to find out actually he's a swan. So he's beautiful as an adult. And it's a story that we tell children to help with growing pains and like being a teen, kind of being awkward and not really comfortable with your own body and that sort of thing. So on the surface, it's a story about some ducks, but in actuality, it is a completely different meaning that is unrelated to ducks entirely. It has to do with growing pains. So similarly, Goblin Market is an allegory. Specifically, it is an allegory told in fairy tale form. Now, a fairy tale, many of you are probably familiar with fairy tales and know a few of them yourself. A fairy tale is a story that is designed to teach a moralistic lesson to children. Um, some of the more popular fairy tales are like Cinderella, Hansel and Gretel, this kind of thing. Gretel. Anyway, in the old days, fairy tales were actually really dark. And I don't know if you know this, but most of the fairy tales that were told, that were collected by like the Brothers Grimm and all that stuff, uh, they were not the kind of stories that you would probably tell your children today. But nevertheless, it's written for children. Now, the problem with this particular work is that, yes, it is an allegory written as a fairy tale, and that implies that it should be for children. However, it is not for children. The themes of this poem, the subject matter, once we start to talk about it, is about as adult themed as it gets. Uh, this is not a story for children at all. So the question is why? Why would she publish such a thing as a fairy tale if it isn't for children? And so that's a complicated question to answer. To really get to the root of it, though, we got to talk about a little bit about the history, particularly the history of women's rights at this point in time. Now, women were starting to enter into the intellectual sphere in the form of authorship. This is the period of like Wollstonecraft and Shelley and stuff. Uh, this is a time when women are finding their voice in literary form, but they still do not have a lot of they don't have a lot of agency within the society itself, particularly as it regards courtship and marriage. Now, when I talk to my students today about marriage, I say, well, who do you marry? And the answer is usually the one you love, and that is ideal, right? However, for most of history, unfortunately, to the dismay of many unhappy couples throughout the history books, for most of history, marriage was a means of securing political or social power. It was a means of accumulating wealth. It was a means of bringing people, different clans and different families together under an alliance. And so the love, unfortunately, came secondary. Um, and for a woman, for most of British history at least, uh, to be married was one of the most important things that you could possibly do. In fact, it was really the primary concern of most young women was to find a suitable husband, one that would improve their social standing. And sorry, I have some kind of ailment. That would improve their social standing and would allow them to sort of have some kind of agency through their husband is the theory. So you really wanted to marry well. Now the problem was that if it were determined that you were not chaste, meaning if you were not a virgin at the time of being married, the deal was usually off. And so there was a lot of pressure on women during the time period to remain chaste and to remain pure and to abstain from sexual behavior and to really, it wasn't even just sexual behavior. It was you couldn't even be seen with a man in public unless you were married to him. But if you were, that would start some rumors, and those rumors would destroy your reputation. You would become damaged goods, so to speak, and then you would be basically out of the marriage market. And the sort of unfortunate thing about this is that the same didn't really apply to men. Men were kind of expected to be somewhat promiscuous, and if it wasn't really considered great behavior to be promiscuous as a man, but you would not be punished to the point of losing your livelihood. Um, in fact, you could, in most cases, you could persist without issue. So this is a big problem. This is a double standard. And it is one of many double standards that sort of haunted the marriage and courtship market during the Victorian era. The way that I describe the Victorian era also is it's like a mullet haircut. If you ever hear the expression, the mullet haircut is business in the front, party in the back, right? That's how the Victorian era was. On the surface, everyone was very prim and very proper and very chaste and very good. Under the surface, it's a party. There's a lot of prostitution, there's a lot of drug use, there's a lot of sexual promiscuity, and despite this, women bore the brunt of the social repercussions for that unfortunate reality. Um, so this isn't fair, right? And as a woman who has a voice and is a accomplished author, Christina Rossetti felt compelled to comment on the issues of sort of the double standard as it applies to human sexuality during the Victorian period. Now, did you get that the first time you read through Goblin Market? Did human sexuality during the Victorian era, did it cross your mind? Maybe it did, because some of the language is very suggestive. And I have students that are like, well, I kind of thought that's where it was going, but it's a fairy tale with these goblins, so like I really didn't go there. I didn't let myself go there. You should have gone there, because that's exactly what is going on. This is a very risque, very adult themed poem. It's I've gotten used to reading it to classes, but there are times when it's like, okay, let's get through this one. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to go ahead and read it. I'll stop as I have periodically and interject, give you little bits of information about the stanza we're reading or a little bit of context about what's going on. And then hopefully by the end, this very weird and bizarre poem that I made you read will make sense. So without further ado, let's check out Goblin Market. And I will try to get through it. Ugh. It's like I can't catch a break with these ailments. All right. Morning and evening, maids heard the goblins cry. Come buy our orchard fruits, come buy, come buy. Apples and quinces, lemons and oranges, plumped unpicked cherries, melons and raspberries, bloomed down cheap peaches, swart-headed mulberries, wild freeborn cranberries, crab apples, dewberries, pineapples, blackberries, apricots, strawberries, all ripe together in summer weather. Morns that pass by, fair eves that fly, come buy, our grapes fresh from the vine, pomegranates full and fine, dates and sharp bullaces, rare pears and greengages, damsons and bilberries, taste them and try. Currants and gooseberries, bright fire-like barberries, figs to fill your mouth, citrons from the south, sweet to the tongue and sound to the eye, come buy, come buy. So we start with this this is emulating a market crier. So if you've ever been, and most of you haven't, if you've ever been to an open air market, the people who are selling their wares, they're selling bread, they're selling candles, whatever, they will scream out as you walk by, hey, I got this, I got that, I got candles, I got wax, I got shoes over here, I'm a shoemaker, right? So you'll kind of like scream your wares out as people walk by. that's what's going on. Someone is trying to entice attenders of this market to purchase fruit. Now, why fruit? Well, think about Eden, the Garden of Eden. Think about the forbidden fruit. Think about the forbidden context of the fruit as it applies to human sexuality. Now we understand why the goblins would be selling fruit. Now, it doesn't say that there are goblins here yet, but we're going to figure that out soon. Okay, I may have to pause it periodically to cough. Evening by evening, among the brookside rushes, Laura bowed her head to hear. Lizzie veiled her blushes, crouching close together in cooling weather, with clasping arm and cautioning lips, with tingling cheeks and fingertips. Lie close, Laura said, pricking up her golden head. We must not look at goblin men, we must not buy their fruits. Who knows upon what soil they fed their hungry, thirsty roots? Come by, call the goblins, hobbling down the glen. Now, literally this part, or where they say, who knows upon what soil they fed their hungry, thirsty roots. Who knows where these dudes have been is really what it's saying. And the fruit they're selling is not fruit, it's sexual intercourse, basically. So these young women are passing the goblins. The goblins are trying to entice them, seduce them, so to speak. They're trying to resist. One of the sisters is interested, and the other sister is like, no, 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 don't listen to them, don't listen to them. You don't know where they've been. This is, figurative in a way, but also STIs at this time were a problem, especially because penicillin didn't exist. So one of the big ones was syphilis, if you'll recall from our discussion about William Blake. This was a problem. So when she says you don't know where they've been, like she means it. Okay. You should not peep at goblin men. Lizzie covered up her eyes, covered close lest they should look. Laura reared her glossy head and whispered like the restless brook. Look, Lizzie, down the glen tramp little men. One hauls a basket, one bears a plate, one lungs a golden dish of many pounds weight. How fair the vine must grow, whose grapes are so luscious. How warm the wind must blow through those fruit bushes. No, said Lizzie, no, no, no. Their offers should not charm us. Their evil gifts would harm us. She thrust a dimpled finger in each ear, shut eyes and ran. Curious Laura chose to linger, wondering at each merchant man. One had a cat's face, one whisked a tail, one tramped at a rat's pace, one crawled like a snail, one like a wombat prowled, obtuse and furry, one like a rat-tail tumbled hurry-scurry. She heard a voice like voice of doves, cooing all together. They sounded kind and full of loves in the pleasant weather. Okay, so the description of the fruit is meant to be a little bit suggestive. So if you pick up on that, you're not wrong. Also, the goblins are described as being like animalistic in a way, like rats and cats and lions and tigers and bears. That is sort of I think an indictment of the animalistic behaviors of men at the time, if I could guess. And they sound kind. They sound very nice. They're like, oh, yeah, you're very nice. Come and buy our fruit. No big deal. So this is meant to entice them, right? Laura stretched her gleaming neck like a rush-embedded swan, like a lily from the beck, like a moonlit poplar branch, like a vessel at the launch when its last restraint is gone. So Laura is falling for the goblins, basically. And all of these similes kind of imply that. Okay. Backwards up the mossy glen, turned and trooped the goblin men, with their shrill repeated cry, come by, come by. When they reached where Laura was, they stood stock still upon the moss, leering at each other, brother with queer brother, signaling each other, brother with sly brother. One set his basket down, one reared his plate. One began to weave a crown of tendrils, leaves, and rough nuts brown. Men sell not such in any town. One heaved the golden weight of dish and fruit to offer her. Come by, was still their cry. Laura stared, but did not stir, longed, but had no money. The whisk-tailed merchant bade her taste in tones as smooth as honey. The cat face purred, the rat face spoke a word of welcome, and the snail paste even was heard. One parrot voiced in jolly cried, pretty goblins still, for pretty Polly. One whistled like a bird. But sweet-toothed Laura spoke in haste, good folk, I have no coin. To take were to purloin. I have no copper in my purse, I have no silver either, and all my gold is on the furze that shakes in windy weather, above the rusty heather. You have much gold upon your head, they answered all together. Buy from us with a golden curl. She clipped a precious golden lock. She dropped a tear more rare than pearl, then sucked their fruit globes, fair or red, sweeter than honey from the rock. Okay, let's stop there for just a second. Um, the the lock of her hair. So going back to like Arthurian legends, the lock of the hair is a symbol of the maiden's chastity, of her like if you're going off to on a quest like in the King Arthur myths, and the fair young maiden gives you a lock of her hair, she's basically saying, I'm yours and I'll be here when you get back. So it's like a symbol for chastity, or like purity. And so by giving these goblins a lock of her hair, she is symbolically giving them her chastity, her purity, her virginity, whatever you want to say. Okay. Sweeter than honey from the rock, stronger than man rejoicing wine. Clearer than water flowed that juice. She never tasted such before. How should it cloy with length of use? She sucked and sucked and sucked the more. Fruits which that an orchard bore, she sucked until her lips were sore. Okay, do we get it now? Cool. Then flung the emptied rinds away, but gathered up one kernel stone, and knew not was it night or day, and she turned home alone. Lizzie met her at the gate, full of wise upbraidings. Dear, you should not stay so late. Twilight is not good for maidens, should not loiter in the glen, in the haunts of goblin men. Do you not remember Jeanie, how she met them in the moonlight? Took their gifts, both choice and many, ate their fruits and wore their flowers, plucked from bowers where summer ripens at all hours. But ever in the noonlight she pined and pined away, sought them by night and day, found them no more, but dwindled and grew gray. Then fell with the first snow, while to this day no grass will grow where she lies low. I planted daisies there a year ago that never blow. You should not loiter so. All right, so then she brings up Jeanie. Jeanie represents a young woman that became like an old maid or a spinster, or she was unmarried, and because she was unmarried, she died. Now, whether she literally died because of something like syphilis or something, or if she died figuratively, as in, her upward mobility, her agency in the society died, that's up to interpretation. But she tries to use this dead girl, and the fact that flowers will not grow on her grave, meaning that her life does not yield any sort of bounty. It's representative of the punishment that women would incur as a consequence of this sort of transgression. All right. Nay, hush, said Laura. Nay, hush, my sister. I ate and ate my fill, yet my mouth waters still. Tomorrow night I will buy more, and kissed her. Have done with sorrow. I'll bring you plums tomorrow, fresh on their mother twigs, cherries worth getting. You cannot think what figs my teeth have met in. What melons icy cold, piled on a dish of gold, too huge for me to hold. What peaches with a velvet nap, pellucid grapes without one seed, odorous indeed must be the mead whereupon they grow, and pure the wave they drink, with lilies at the brink, and sugar sweet their sap. Okay. She's like, man, you don't even know what you're missing. The fruit was delicious. I'm going to go back. So then they go back home. They're back home. Golden head by golden head, like two pigeons in one nest, folded in each other's wings. They lay down in their curtained bed like two blossoms on one stem, like two flakes of new fallen snow, like two wands of ivory, tipped with gold for awful kings. Moon and stars gazed in at them. Wind sang them to lullaby. Lumbering owls forbore to fly. Not a bat flapped to and fro round their rest, cheek to cheek and breast to breast, locked together in one nest. So there's this idea of them as like being inseparable. They're really, really close as sisters. And there's a constant emphasis through this poem of female camaraderie, or like being allies with each other as females. And I think the implication here is that in order for anything to be done about these unfair social standards, women at least have to be on each other's side. They have to have each other's back. Because if they start buying into the sort of unfair double standard, if they enforce it themselves, then they don't have a chance, right? So I think that's why there is a constant emphasis on female camaraderie or like uh, that sort of thing. Okay. Early in the morning, when the first cock crowed his warning, neat like bees, as sweet and busy, Laura rose with Lizzie, fetched in honey, milked the cows, aired and set to rights the house, kneaded cakes of whitest wheat, cakes for dainty mouths to eat. Next churned butter, whipped up cream, fed their poultry, sat and sewed, talked as modest maidens should, Lizzie with an open heart, Laura in an absent dream. One content, one sick in part, one warbling for the mere bright day's delight, one longing for the night. Okay, so it's kind of a continuation of the same thing. Laura is now fixated on the goblins and like she can't even think about anything else. It's like destroying her life, her normal life. But also, these two sisters are very self-reliant. They're like running the farm on their own. I don't think that's an accident either. I think that Rossetti's implication is that together they can sort of sustain themselves and that they don't necessarily need men or they don't need the approval of the goblins or what have you. Okay. At length slow evening came. They went with pitchers to the reedy brook, Lizzie most placid in her look, Laura most like a leaping flame. They drew the gurgling water from its deep. Lizzie plucked purple and rich golden flags, then turning homeward said, the sunset flushes those furthest loftiest crags. Come, Laura, not another maiden lags. No wilful squirrel wags. The beasts and birds are fast asleep, but Laura loitered still among the rushes, and said the bank was steep. And said the hour was early still, the dew not fallen, the wind not chill, listening ever, but not catching the customary cry. Come by, with its iterated jingle of sugar-baited words, not for all her watching, once discerning even one goblin, racing, whisking, tumbling, hobbling, let alone the herds that used to trample on the glen in groups or single of brisk fruit merchant men. So when they go back, Laura realizes she can no longer hear the goblins. But as you're about to find out, her sister can still hear them. So what it is that the goblins are no longer interested in her because she is no longer chaste or pure or whatever. Okay. Till Lizzie urged, "Oh, Laura, come. I hear the fruit call, but I dare not look. You should not loiter long at this brook. Come with me home. The stars rise, the moon bends her arc, each glowworm winks her spark. Let us get home before the night grows dark, for clouds may gather, though this is summer weather. Put out the lights and drench us through. Then if we lost our way, what should we do?" Laura turned as cold as stone to find her sister heard the cry alone, that goblin cry, "Come buy our fruits, come buy." Must she then buy no more such dainty fruit? Must she no more succulous pasture find, gone deaf and blind? Her tree of life drooped from the root. There's another biblical Eden reference. She said not one word in her heart's sore ache, but peering through the dimness, not discerning, trudged home, her pitcher dripping all the way, so crept to bed and lay, silent till Lizzie slept, then sat up in a passionate yearning, and gnashed her teeth for balked desire, and wept as if her heart would break. Day after day, night after night, Laura kept watch in vain, in sullen silence of exceeding pain. She never caught again the goblin cry, come by, come buy. She never spied the goblin men, hawking their fruits along the glen. But when the noon waxed bright, her hair grew thin and gray. She dwindled as the fair moon doth turn to swift decay and burn her fire away. Okay, so she can no longer hear the goblins, and she starts to wither and like really there's a way of looking at this where she's having a withdrawal. And remember, drug use was a problem in the Victorian era, so it could be that there's like several meanings to this, and that actually this may be like a reference to opium withdrawal, or it might actually be a reference to literal STI, like syphilis, as she's gotten sick, or it could just be that her excuse me, that her transgression has robbed her of her livelihood in a figurative sense, and that's being translated in a literal sickness. Okay. One day, remembering her kernel stone, she set it by a wall that faced the south, dewed it with tears, hoped for a root, watched for a waxing shoot, but there came none. It never saw the sun. It never felt the trickling moisture run. While with sunk eyes and faded mouth, she dreams of melons as a traveler sees, false waves in a desert drought, with shade of leaf-crowned trees, and burns the thirstier in the sandful breeze. She no more swept the house, tended the fowls or cows, fetched honey, kneaded cakes of wheat, brought water from the brook, but sat down listless in the chimney nook, and would not eat. Tender Lizzie could not bear to watch her sister's cankerous care, yet not to share she night and morning, caught the goblin's cry. Come buy our orchard fruits, come buy, come buy. Beside the brook along the glen, she heard the tramp of goblin men. The yoke had stir. Poor Laura could not hear, longed to buy her fruit to comfort her, but feared to pay too dear. She thought of Jeanie in her grave, who should have been a bride, but who for joys brides hope to have, fell sick and died in her gay prime, in earliest winter time, with the first glazing rime, with the first snowfall of crisp winter time. So Lizzie wants to help her sister by buying the fruit, but she's like, man, I can't get over what happened to Jeanie, and my sister is sick, and my sister's can't even grow a garden. Like nothing she touches come to fruition at this point. So it's a tough situation. Till Laura dwindling seemed knocking at death's door. Then Lizzie weighed no more. Better and worse, but put a silver penny in her purse, kissed Laura across the heath with clumps of firs. At twilight halted by the brook, and for the first time in her life began to listen and to look. Okay, so she has resolved, like, okay, to hell with it, to hell with the danger. Yeah, I could ruin my reputation, but I got to save my sister. I got to do something. So she's going to go and try to buy some fruit from the goblin so she can bring it back to her sister, and her sister will be cured. Laughed every goblin when they spied her peeping, came towards her hobbling, flying, running, leaping, puffing and blowing, chuckling, clapping, crowing, clucking and gobbling, mopping and mowing, full of airs and graces, pulling wry faces, demure grimaces, cat-like and rat-like, rat-tail and wombat-like, snail-paced, in a hurry, parrot-voiced and whistler, helter-skelter, hurry-scurry, chattering like magpies, fluttering like pigeons, gliding like fishes, hugged her and kissed her, squeezed and caressed her, stretched up their dishes, panniers and plates. Look at our apples, russet and dun, bob at our cherries, bite at our peaches, citrons and dates, grapes for the asking. Pears red with basking, out in the sun, plums on their twigs, pluck them and suck them, pomegranates, figs. Good folks, said Lizzie, mindful of Jeanie, give me much and many, held out her apron, tossed them her penny. Nay, take a seat with us, honor and eat with us. So she tries to buy the fruit and just go away, but they're like, no, you have to stay here. And then they answer grinning, our feast is but beginning. Night yet is early, warm and dew pearly, wakeful and starry. Such fruits as these no man can carry. Half their bloom would fly, half their dew would dry, half their flavor would pass by. Sit down and feast with us, be welcome guests with us, cheer you and rest with us. Thank you, said Lizzie, but one waits at home alone for me. So without further parleying, if you will not sell me any of your fruits, though much and many, give me back my silver penny I tossed you for a fee. She's like, you know what? I'm not going to hang out with you. I'm not going to buy into this. If you're not going to sell me the fruit, go ahead and give me back my coin. And you notice she used a coin. She did not give a lock of her hair. So the currency is a little bit different. It's like she still is retaining her purity somehow. They began to scratch their pates, no longer wagging, purring, but visibly demurring, grunting and snarling. One called her proud, cross-grained, uncivil. Their tones waxed loud, their looks were evil. Lashing their tails, they trod and hustled her, elbowed and jostled her, clawed with their nails, barking, mewing, hissing, mocking, tore her gown and soiled her stocking, twitched her hair out by the roots, stamped upon her tender feet, held her hands and squeezed their fruits against her mouth to make her eat. Okay, this is probably now you're realizing how kind of terrible this part is. They're basically assaulting her. And that is intentional by Rossetti. She's basically implying that they are assaulting her. So that is a bit heavy. White and golden Lizzie stood, like a lily in the flood, like a rock of blue-veined stone, lashed by tides obstreperously, like a beacon left alone in a hoary, roaring sea, sending up a golden fire like a fruit-crowned orange tree, white with blossoms honey-sweet, sore beset by wasp and bee, like a royal virgin town, topped with gilded dome and spire, close beleaguered by a fleet, mad to tug her standard down. So she's like resisting them, and all of these similes comparing her to, like a rock being lambasted by the ocean, or like a lighthouse being a sole beacon in a storm. Like she is able to resist this onslaught and maintain her purity or her chastity, or sort of avoid the entrappings of the fruit, so to speak. One may lead a horse to water, 20 cannot make him drink. Though the goblins cuffed and caught her, coaxed and fought her, bullied and besought her, scratched her, pinched her as black as ink, kicked and knocked her, mauled and mocked her, Lizzie uttered not a word, would not open lip from lip, lest they should cram a mouthful in. but laughed in heart to feel the drip of juice that syruped all her face and lodged in dimples of her chin, and streaked her neck with which quaked like curd. At last the evil people, worn out by her resistance, flung back her penny, kicked their fruit along whichever road they took, not leaving root or stone or shoot. Some writhed into the ground, some dived into the brook with ring and ripple, some scudded on the gale without a sound, some vanished in the distance. So they just like get frustrated and leave after it becomes apparent that she isn't going to give in to them and that their assault is not going to pay out. They just get frustrated and leave. In a smart ache tingle, Lizzie went her way, knew not was it night or day, sprang up the bank, tore through the furs, threaded corpse and dingle, and heard her penny jingle, bouncing in her purse. Its bounce was music to the ear. She ran and ran, as if she feared some goblin man dodged her with gibe or curse, or something worse. But not one goblin scurried after, nor was she pricked by fear. The kind heart made her windy pace, that urged her home, quite out of breath with haste and inward laughter. She cried, Laura, up the garden, did you miss me? Come and kiss me, never mind my bruises, hug me, kiss me, suck my juices, squeeze from goblins fruits for you, goblin pulp and goblin dew, eat me, drink me, love me, Laura, make much of me. For your sake I have braved the glen and had to do with goblin merchant men. So this particular stanza is where it gets really weird, because it's hard not to read this as slightly homoerotic, like she says, eat me, drink me, love me. But they are sisters, so that's like really kind of way disturbing, way taboo. Please remember at this time that homosexual behavior was illegal and could have resulted in all kinds of nasty legal consequences, which I won't comment on. But I do think that if Rossetti is sort of lauding homosexuality or sort of like trying to normalize it in a way, then it's way before its time, what she's doing here. It could just be that it's for shock value, and that it isn't really that kind of, but I think there's a strong case that it is. And you can make of that what you will. Okay. Laura started from her chair, flung her arms up in the air, clutched her hair. Lizzie, Lizzie, have you tasted, for my sake, the fruit forbidden? Must your light like mine be hidden? Your young life, like mine be wasted? Undone in my undoing, and ruined in my ruin, thirsty, cankered, goblin-ridden, she clung about her sister, kissed and kissed and kissed her. Tears once again refreshed her shrunken eyes, dropping like rain after long, sultry drought. Shaking with anguish, fear, and pain, she kissed and kissed her with a hungry mouth. Her lips began to scorch. That juice was wormwood to her tongue. She loathed the feast. Writhing as one possessed, she leaped and sung, rinsed all her robe and wrung her hands in lamentable haste, and beat her breast. Her locks streamed like the torch borne by a racer at full speed, or like the mane of horses in their flight, or like an eagle when she stems the light straight towards the sun, or like a caged thing freed, or like a flying flag when armies run. Swift fire spread through her veins, knocked at her heart, met the fire smoldering there, and overbore its lesser flame. She gorged on bitterness without a name. Ah, fool to choose such part of soul-consuming care, since failed in the mortal strife like a watchtower of a town, which an earthquake shatters down, like a lightning-stricken mast, like a wind-uprooted tree, spun about like a foam-topped waterspout, cast down headlong in the sea. She fell at last, pleasure past and anguish past. Is it death or is it life? So Lizzie's second ingesting of the fruit is not pleasurable at all, and that's kind of weird, because if it was the fruit that was giving her the pleasure, then it should be the same, but it isn't. And so is it the absence of the goblins that makes it less enjoyable, or is it that the whole prospect of sexuality has been ruined or tainted for her in some way because of her transgression and her social status? It's a very strange. Right here at the end, there's a lot of weird stuff that I haven't really figured out yet. And so if anyone would like to write a paper on that, you certainly can. Life out of death. That night long Lizzie watched by her, counted her pulses' flagging stir, felt for her breath, held water to her lips, and cooled her face with tears and fanning leaves. When the first birds chirped about their eaves, and early reapers plodded to the place of golden sheaves and dew-wet grass, bowed in the morning wind so brisk to pass, and new buds with new day. opened of cup like lilies on the stream, Laura awoke as from a dream, laughed in the innocent old way, hugged Lizzie not twice or thrice. Her gleaming locks showed not one thread of gray. Her breath was sweet as May, and light danced in her eyes. She's been redeemed. She's been healed because her sister transgressed on her behalf, but she didn't really transgress. I see. I don't. The ending is there's a lot going on. Okay. Days, weeks, months, years afterwards, when both were wives, with children of their own, their mother hearts beset with fears, their lives bound up in tender lives, Laura would call the little ones and tell them of her early prime, those pleasant days long gone of not returning time, would talk about the haunted glen, the wicked, quaint fruit merchantmen, their fruits like honey to the throat, but poison in the blood. Men sell not such in any town, would tell them how her sisters stood in deadly peril to do her good, and win the fiery antidote, then joining hands to little hands would bid them cling together. For there is no friend like a sister, in calm or stormy weather, to cheer one on the tedious way, to fetch one if one goes astray, to lift one if one totters down, to strengthen whilst one stands. And so it ends with them being mothers, and they have children, and they're instilling in the little girls this idea that they have to stick together, that the sisters, that women in general have to be sort of in alliance with one another, and they have to pick each other up, because if they don't, they're going to suffer the fate of the goblin market. So I hope now that this has opened up to you in terms of its actual meaning. It is a very interesting poem. It is also a little bit disturbing, to say the least. And there's a lot of social critique and sort of commentary on gender roles and sort of double standards and all this stuff. So hopefully you, I'm not going to say enjoyed it, hopefully you got something out of this. And we are almost done with poetry, not much more. So if you're just in absolute pain, the light is at the end of the tunnel. So thanks very much for listening. I will see you again soon.